Hi, my name's Steve Hoare, Gaming Intelligence, and I am here with scientific games, analytics and insights experts to discuss the changes that they have seen in player behaviour during the pandemic. And we're going to discuss what lotteries need to do to prepare for life after lockdown. A little bit of housekeeping first. The format of this will be a presentation from our scientific games experts, and that will be a short while, and then after that we're going to have a Q&A to grill them on all the things that we need to know for life in the future. If you have a look at your GoToWebinar control panel, there's various bits and bobs on there. Mine's on the right, yours might be on the left of the screen. The key one, which I want you to use, if you so desire, is the questions one. If you press the drop-down menu, you can type your questions in there. They'll be sent directly to me, and then I'll be able to put them to Tim and Liga, our panelists, later. And you can do that anytime. Please, if you've got a question, if in the middle of the presentation you've got a question, please bang it in there before you forget it, and I'll ask it after the presentation. So let me introduce you to our scientific games experts. I am here with Liga Magdalenica Keen, who is Scientific Games Director of Insights. She's in their European team, based in the UK, as am I. She's worked for Unilever and Sky Betting and Gaming in the past, and she's been with Scientific Games for almost half a decade now. And we are joined from across the Atlantic in Chicago by Director of Market Research, Tim Menzies. And so we've got a bit of a transatlantic hookup going on here. And of course, we have all our attendees from all over the world, actually. So it's a truly global event today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Tim and Liga. Over to you guys.
Thank you very much, Steve. Can you see my screen? Everyone, excellent, excellent, yes. Excellent. Oh, and you can see my laser pen as well. Also excellent. Excellent. So hello, everyone. Lessons from the year that changed the world. So I'm sure all of you have like hundreds and thousands of lessons and takeaways from the past year. But today we wanted to concentrate just on 3 lessons. 3 main lessons that we think are applicable to all lotteries around the world, and 3 main ones that are relevant now and we believe will remain relevant for many years to come. What is also very nice, for the first time, we will have a look at US and Europe side by side in one presentation, also a very short presentation, just 15 minutes. So let's have a look. So where it all started, in Europe, Italy was leading the way. We all remember it very well here. Italy was leading the way, and all countries in Europe were watching it closely, taking notes and learning from it. So France, Spain and Germany were very close to follow, with UK slightly behind. We were hoping that it would go away, but it didn't. So the necessary measures were implemented across Europe. Lockdowns generated a panic stockpiling. I think many of us remember that essential goods like pasta, flour, yeast, sanitary products like gloves, wipes, alcohol were flying off the shelves. Record sales were recorded. Safety and social distancing became like main factor that consumers were concerned about at the time, and that really altered their behavior, and you will see why it's important later on. So people started coming to the shops less frequently, but when they did, they purchased much more, so the shopping basket really increased. Trends like online shopping really accelerated, with click and collect leading the way.
Check out the top 10 categories that were purchased most online. As Liga mentioned, most of these categories listed are essential items. However, bread machines were right up there in the #2 spot, just behind disposable gloves, which I would have never guessed would happen. What's interesting is that the same categories top this list regardless of location, international or domestic. If you're lucky enough to score a bread machine, like Liga said, finding the ingredients to make the bread, yeast and flour and all these other baking necessities, nowhere to be found on the shelves. We all saw signs like this at retail. I saw them in almost every retailer I went to, no matter what type it was. Did anyone out there resort to making their own face masks or hand sanitizer? It was nearly impossible to find them online or in store. My family and I, we figured, you know what, we're not willing to pay $60 on eBay for a small bottle of hand sanitizer, so let's try making our own. So we went online and we ordered what we needed. Unfortunately, we got to 70% isopropyl alcohol. Guess what? You need 91% to truly be effective. So this little experiment went nowhere, unfortunately. We never did it.
Well, yes, amongst all this chaos, some lotteries had their best year ever, especially in the United States. And some lotteries actually had their worst year ever, especially some lotteries here in Europe. So the big question is, with overall consumer trends being so similar, why did lottery performance across the world differ so greatly? So this can be explained in our lesson number 1, probably the most important, the importance of being accessible.
So most packaged goods manufacturers have had multi-channel retail strategies in place for years and years, and it all paid off for them during the pandemic because their products remained available to consumers of all types. This accessibility also applies to lottery products. The more touch points and access points lotteries have with players, the more engaged players can actually be. If your lottery products aren't accessible, you're out of sight, out of mind. You have to be accessible regardless of any situation. Even if you're not an essential product, during a global pandemic, you have to be accessible.
True, true. It is critical for lottery products to be available in as many touch points as possible, especially in places where our players engage with other products or services. Lottery products need to be present and fully stocked. So in our studies here, you can see we discovered people have changed routines, habits, and activities dramatically, especially in Europe. In this changing environment, it is so important for lotteries to be accessible. The lotteries that did the best at staying accessible actually performed the best. So it is as simple as that. But if we have a closer, more deep dive into some of the statistics you saw in previous slides, so for Italy in particular, we can see that nearly half of people who said that their commute has changed dramatically now work from home. We can see that over half of people who said that their shopping habits are nothing like they used to be now shop more online. And we also learned that people who really experience like dramatic changes in their disposable income, they not necessarily experienced negative changes, because although their income decreased, their spend also decreased. How about US, Tim? Did you see similar trends there?
Yeah, extremely similar, Liga. In the United States, the trends really lined up almost identically. Shopping online and working from home were on the rise prior to the pandemic already, but since then they've truly become mainstream, I think, in almost any location. I never thought I would be on a first name basis with our delivery guy, but we are, and I'm sure I'm not alone. With all the changing of habits and daily routines comes a change in access points as well. Again, the lotteries that adapted to these changes most effectively saw the biggest gains to their bottom lines, and this allowed them to give more back to their beneficiaries. We already learned that people's habits and routines have changed dramatically around the world. What comes with all this change is an increase in spare time and a reallocation of disposable income. These two have a tremendous effect on lottery play, which brings us to lesson number 2, the importance of being adaptive.
Absolutely. The only constant in life is change, and this ancient Greek saying has never been more true than now. So let's have a look again at Italy. Here you can see more information from the studies we did. So in Italy, we learned that consumers were making fewer shopping trips for groceries, but not just for groceries, for lottery purchases as well. We can see that a fewer lottery purchases happened during pandemic, significant decrease. However, these fewer trips were maximized with larger shopping baskets, as we mentioned earlier. And that's exactly the same like for groceries in general. The same happened for lottery tickets. So more games were purchased per each shopping occasion. Something else happened. You can see here, something else really happened. Players started to see the value in higher price point games. While fewer trips were being made, the number of tickets purchased at higher price points increased significantly. In fact, people who purchased 3 or more 20-euro games in Italy tripled in the past year. So it is very important to see that players were coming to the retail point less often, that's true, but with much bigger budget. They also probably were bringing tickets from the previous winning tickets from the previous purchasing occasion. So it all allowed players to purchase more games and try price points they previously never played, actually. So Tim, did you see similar trends in US?
Some yes, some no. Compared to Italy, in the US, there were less restrictions. And as a result, frequency of instant scratch games didn't decrease, they actually increased significantly. Where in the US, they did line up with Italy is with the growing popularity of the high price points. In both countries, players seem to appreciate the value that higher price point games provide. Last year, we conducted retailer interviews in 2 states through telephone surveys. And one of the consistent findings that we found in both states was that retailers noticed instant scratch customers buying a lot more at the higher price point. So this really validated what we saw with consumers. So with the rising popularity of high price points, lotteries need to adapt their game mix to meet the increased demand. Not only do game bins need to stay full, the high price point games now need to appeal to different types of players who are interested in upping their actual game. Also, from our studies, we learned that players who purchase 2 of the higher price points, the 10s and the 20s, they're more likely to repurchase instant scratch games in the next 12 months. So adapting doesn't just drive trial, it supports repeat business, which is really the key to long-lasting success. So now let's talk about new players. They're really the future of lottery success. For the past year, people have been proactively seeking new forms of entertainment. And with choices being so limited during the pandemic, especially in the gaming sector, this has been a great time to bring new players on board. This brings us to lesson number 3, the importance of being attractive.
Yes, the importance of attracting new players or acquisition, that's another great word for this lesson starting with A. So this is probably the least obvious lesson out of 3, but we do think that this is just as important as the previous 2 lessons for the foreseeable future. So let's have a look at Italy one more time. Italy is a very mature and saturated market for the instant win games, as I'm sure you know. But impressive thing happened that within this mature market, now over 8% of the player base consists of players who joined in the past 12 months. That's amazing. But what is even more amazing, that nearly 9 out of 10 of these players stayed with the category. So they didn't just wander in, like all of us tried some new hobbies and ways to pass time or use spare cash. But they didn't just wander into our category and left. They found something that they really liked. So their expectations were met and exceeded with existing games in the market, and they have stayed. That's pretty much amazing. What is even more amazing is that the quality of these new players attracted during pandemic is higher than for the existing player base. You can see that the majority of new players in Italy are either enthusiasts or passionate. These are the two most engaged and loyal lottery players segments that you could have in instant win game business. They do genuinely appreciate our games, they love our games, and they tend to remain loyal, so they in it for a long term. So these two segments on average account for close to 80% of overall annual instant win game sales. So they are incredibly important, and we do need to look after these players. We need to find out what exactly motivates them, what are their need states, right, so we have the right games for these two segments in the market. How about US?
Well, it's unfair to compare the US to Italy because the US has so much more headroom for growth in this category compared to Italy. And closures were more extreme in Italy than they were in the US. So with that in mind, in the United States, almost 20% of instant scratch players just started playing in the past 12 months. I mean, that's a huge number. Recent studies we've conducted found that this is greatly due to the lack of gambling options during the pandemic, especially with the widespread casinos closing and minimal options gambling online in the States. It had a huge effect. Like Italy, a significant number of these players, though, they have stuck around and continued to engage in lottery in the past 5 months. 86% did, which is almost exactly what Liga reported for Italy. So very, very similar trend there. That's all great news. In the US, fans and friends segments are the equivalent of enthusiasts and passionates in Europe. New players fell into these high value segments in the United States, but not to the extent that they did in Italy. Instead, a great number of new players came from our visitors segment that prefers extended play games. Most of the quant research that we've conducted in 2020 backed this up. They found that the popularity of extended play games rose significantly during COVID. This stems from the desire for increased playtime, which in the player's mind has a bigger bang for the buck when it comes to entertainment especially. So what's the secret then? How do we make these new players stay with us? What do you think, Liga?
Good question. From the player's perspective, things always are easy. They just want us to be available wherever they are. They want us to adapt to the changes, and they want us to be attractive. So we got products for their motivations and their needs. And I think, Tim, you have some very useful information to tell us about what motivates these players.
Indeed, I do, Liga. From our collaborative global segmentation efforts here at Scientific Games, we know what motivates good quality players to play. It's a variety of top prizes across all price points. You also need a variety of play styles across price points. And lastly, innovation is truly key. Players are always looking for new types of games. If lotteries don't deliver, consumers are simply going to look somewhere else to fill that entertainment void.
Absolutely, that is true. So newness and innovation are crucial in maintaining newcomers' enjoyment and entertainment. And it's not just about keeping these good quality new players. It's also about those players who actually stopped playing during COVID. There is a considerable proportion of player base there as well. We need to welcome them back. And the best way to do that is something to talk about, something exciting, something innovative. So what's next on the innovation roadmap? Here we are with some ideas for Europe in particular that would be most welcome by players, and for United States as well. What really matters is we just need to focus on at least one innovative area for our players and decide what is the next game changer for my lottery to bring it to the next level. That's all our players want at the moment. So thank you very much. We hope you enjoyed our take on lessons from the past 15 months, and it will start some interesting conversations. That was the main objective of this short presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tim and Liga. That was very interesting. I'm liking the chemistry between you two. You go far on TV. Just a quick reminder to our audience about the questions box, which is in your GoToWebinar control panel. It's a drop down. It says questions. Type in any questions that you want answered in there, and I will endeavour to ask Tim and Liga what the replies are. But first of all, guys, there was a lot of information there, a lot of stats. Tell me a little bit about the methodology. Where did all this data come from?
So we did an online survey. The survey was about 12 minutes in length on average. That was the same for Italy as well as the United States. The sample size was just over 1,000 for both, which is truly enough to give us some great results that we could drill down upon, especially at the segmentation level, which is really important for what we do. The same questions were asked, exact same questions for Italy as well as the US. The only thing that was different is really the denoms, it's dollars versus euros and those types of things that were changed. But we asked the identical questions. We also both used nationally rep samples. Really important here. It's not always done because it's more expensive. You have to go to an outside source to do that. But it's truly important here to get that perspective, that total consumer perspective for each country, player or non-player. It's really consumer at that point. And also, big thing to note was these two studies, the surveys that were fielded, were within weeks of each other. So very similar time periods. Again, doesn't always line up. So we made sure that we did that. So we feel really good about these results. We asked the right questions and we lined up all the other things the way we needed to do this the right way.
Yeah, and when they were done, I mean, there's still lockdown restrictions in Italy, presumably at least, and in quite, I don't know the situation in so much detail in the US. Presumably it differs from state to state.
Yeah, it does.
Yes, so it was done within April time. So it was end of April, still a lockdown situation in Italy. Okay,
so it would be interesting to repeat that this exercise if and when all those lockdowns end, right?
Yes, exactly. And the questions asked actually were specifically asked exactly the same questions we had asked before pandemic. So we've got actual comparison how things have changed from old normal to now temporary normal, and then we will check out what will be new different wherever it will be.
Yeah. I'm just going through your A words. One of the keywords, it seemed to me, was accessibility. We didn't talk much about digital games or e-instance.
Right.
I was thinking that surely these are the most accessible for lockdown players who have only got their screens to turn to.
That's true. It is a most accessible way, but e-instance or digital scratch cards deliver a completely different experience to our players. So they are more like a complementary game. They not actually deliver this on the same motivations and need states as physical tickets behind me. So in ideal world, these tickets would be delivered to people's homes and they would be able to order them online in some ways. So it is very important to stay accessible because it's completely different product to the one you can play online. So it's completely different type of entertainment from players'
Right.
perspective.
And even online in the United States, there are 12 states that have iLottery options. And of those 12 states, 8 of them have e-instance. So it's not as broad as it could be. So it was fairly limited, and it does vary by state. That's growing, especially with the pandemic. It's increasing the growth for sure.
But are lotteries taking up the option of mailing out physical scratch cards?
Mhm. There's actually an app. There's a company that's doing that, and I believe they're in 10 states right now. They're doing that on their own. So it's already started, but not to the extent. I mean, there's limited games that they're doing that for. It's mostly draw, some instance, very few though. If they do have instance, it's usually 1 or 2 games.
Yeah.
Again, it's been discussed. We're doing a lot of research on that internally, and talking to players to get their reaction, their feedback, because that's real important to build the strategy going forward.
Yeah.
Mm.
That brings sorry, go on, Liga.
I just wanted to mention that it is up to lotteries whether they want to act on players' need states. We can see that in retail, the big trend is now a race for the reduced time of how quickly you can deliver goods from your local shop. Like in the UK and in Denmark, I think, in Scandinavian countries, Deliveroo now is racing to set the record for 10 minutes from when you actually order something from your corner shop and it delivers to your home. And that will definitely impact our products as well, lottery products, because we do engage with our players when they pop out to corner shop to get a milk or a bread that they run out. And if they spend, let's say, €8, they round up to €10 with like €2 scratch card, for example. That type of behavior is like could be in danger going forward if this type of retail trend turns into mainstream trend. So we need to look that up and continue monitoring this trend very, very closely.
You talked a lot about these new players and the incredible retention rates that we've had. Do you have any ideas about the demographics of these new players?
So demographics aren't as important when you use the segmentation that we have. Really, our segmentation looks at what they play, why they play, and what the value is that they bring to the lottery. So, look at Liga and I. She's young, female. I'm older, male. If you look at demographics, you can't really determine what we're going to purchase or what our preferences are based on what we look like. It's really, we could have the very same preferences and motivation. So we like to have demographics as an overlay on top of the way we do our segmentation, which is based on preferences and motivations mostly. However, with the pandemic, behavioral types of information, behavior is really taking on a whole new level of importance because just restrictions with being able to buy certain things at a certain time. So we are actually adding a bigger behavioral component to our segmentation than has been there in the past. Very important, has always been important, but again, preferences and motivations has been our key. So demographics, important, but it's like an overlay for us.
Yeah,
that's really interesting because I think there's often a bit of an obsession in the industry about targeting the next generation and
right. Exactly.
Exactly that what Tim just said. We discovered that a 20-year-old guy in Liverpool wants to win $1 million just as much as a 60-year-old man in Alaska, let's say. So it's not necessarily demographics that shape the industry. What actually people want to do with their spare income.
Yeah. This guy that's in between them in Sussex would also quite like to win
But to answer your question, Steve, there were new players in all age groups. There really were. So that's great news for us, right? Now it's a matter of retaining them, and we've started off on the right foot. Now it's a matter of continuing to retain them. And from the presentation, we found that, you know, especially in the United States, these new players really love extended play games, and they love the high price point games. They're purchasing at levels that no one ever predicted. Actually, the index higher for purchasing the higher price points than the previous players, the players who have been playing already. So, you know, some lotteries, they cap the extended play games at the $3 price point. You have to consider, if you're not already offering the extended play games at higher price points, you really should consider that, because that's one of the things that truly could help attract these new players.
Yeah.
Keep them on board.
Yeah. Okay, great. I am just going to go to, so we have got quite a few questions here to run through from our audience, who are clearly very engaged. The first one's not really a question, it's just a bravo, Liga and Tim, very interesting. And it was like they were in the same room, says, so it's not just me that thinks that you're wonderful.
You know, Steve, I want to say something here. Really interesting fact. Tim and I have never actually met in real person, like live, never.
Nope.
Well, we'll have to do something about that when this lockdown winds, won't we? We'll host a real life event maybe. Anyway, getting on with the questions. So this one says, the US is doing very well with instant games. What about draw games?
Yeah, draw games are, it's a totally different animal. So this is why the topic was instant games, because there's a lot of dynamics to instant. There's different play styles, there's different themes and price points, and it's just a lot going on. And it's more of an entertainment experience. So we saw a lot of shifting during the pandemic. As far as draw games go, it's so jackpot driven. We don't have a segmentation focused solely on draw. We have one where draw is included, just for general gaming, you know, overall. But draw game is so driven by jackpots that you don't see as much, you know, variability. There's not as much change as instant. So it's been doing fine. The two play off of each other. So if instants do better, it also helps draw, and vice versa. If there's a high jackpot or a couple high jackpots, which we've had the privilege of having just recently with Powerball and Mega Millions, it helps everybody. It really does. We just haven't seen the big spikes or the volatility that the instant side has on the draw side.
Interesting. Okay, our next question. What scratch ticket price point in the US was the best growth point? For example, was it a $30 ticket or $40 ticket?
Well, what we found is as you go up the ladder, they got more and more profitable. So thing is, not all states have $50 available. Really the 10s and the 20s were what we focused on here, because we wanted to be able to compare and contrast with the US versus Italy. So we looked at people who gravitated towards those, but the 10s and the 20s really drove a lot. A lot of people upped their game, as we mentioned in the presentation. They went from a 5 to a 10, or from a 2 and 3 to a 5, sometimes a 10. My parents were one of those. They never considered $5 or a $10 purchase in the past. Now that's all they buy. They experienced it during the pandemic, and they felt the difference in terms of how often they won, and now that's all they buy. So I think we're seeing a lot of that. But the extreme ones, 30 and 50, yes, they did see big lifts, but more mainstream are the 10s, 20s.
Okay, I've got an addendum to that question. Do you see a difference in the bingo/crossword types than the others that don't involve a game within the game?
A difference in terms of popularity amongst players?
Yeah, I think so, yeah, because we were talking about, yeah.
Well, it definitely appealed to the new players. It was a big call out. The visitor extended play, that segment in particular, that was the top segment in terms of growth for new players. So the entertainment value that those brought during the pandemic, it was truly important to players. that also holds true to the existing players. I mean, within our fans, so Liga talked about passionates and enthusiasts. Our fans and friends really drive instant game sales. So what we have found that with the extended play games, if you increase the price point, go up the price point chain to $5 and $10, it does start attracting those two segments more. So the $3 price point isn't as attractive to them, but as you go up the higher price point, it definitely does appeal to them. So important to note there.
Yeah. There's a question here about alternative sales channels. Have they been tried during the COVID process, offering by package service, etc.? I guess we sort of talked about that a little bit. Is there anything to add on that?
No,
really.
that will be to lotteries, depending what is their strategy, whether they respond to players' needs.
Right.
And
I mean, I think the key here was just being as accessible as you possibly can. Look into any and all access points possible. It will do you well to do that, because the more accessible, the more attractive you're going to be.
Yeah, and there's another question here about accessibility. How do you see the possibilities of linking physical scratch tickets to digital experiences? Liga, you came up with a new word that I've never come across before, fidigital. It's a horrible word, Liga, horrible. But
don't say that. Close your ears, everyone.
But tell us about fidigital and linking.
Digital. It's digital, Steve. It's digital. I didn't come with the word. Oh my God, Steve, what you have just said, it's unbelievable. Close your ears, everyone. It never happened. That's the best thing since sliced bread, I'm telling you. It's amazing. I think there was a conference a few months ago, and French lottery FDJ presented a really innovative idea how they bring a physical ticket with a digital element. So they actually purchase the game, like one behind me, and you see whether you won or not. And then you can use that winning or losing ticket to go and play further games online with the code that you get from that physical ticket. So you can double your win, for example, or not double your win, depending on what you decide to do online. So it prolongs your experience, and it brings completely new a level of engagement to the physical ticket. And players really like that idea. It's really innovative. It's really engaging. And maybe we can find a better word that could be a challenge. If we don't like digital.
You won't find it in the Oxford English Dictionary, Liga, I'm telling you.
Well, we could rally for it and get it in a dictionary.
We're going to get into the Scrabble book next. Then it'll be real.
Okay. On to our next question. Do you know if the new players played more through self-serve or over the counter, or are the numbers similar to current players?
Yeah, you know what? That's something that I wanted to call out during the presentation, but with 15 minutes to work with, it was going too far down a rabbit hole. So we're covering that in follow-up types of presentations that we're offering. So yes, they were purchasing through the vending machines more often during the pandemic. Absolutely. In fact, one of our segments is called coverts in the United States, and coverts mostly, if not primarily, purchase their instant scratch games through the vending machine. That was on the uptick. The problem is we don't know how many fans, friends, visitors, and other segments actually switched over to becoming a covert during the pandemic, either because it was the only thing available because the counter was closed, or if that was their preference because of sanitary decisions. So we have done some research, but it's non-conclusive yet. We want to do more. Most of it was qual, and you like to do a few qual projects before you really come to any conclusions. But you know, we definitely saw people gravitating towards vending during the pandemic.
makes sense. Now, this might be a tricky question, but it's an interesting one. Is there a correlation between new players and those who were out of work due to lockdown? Likewise, existing players who started purchasing higher value tickets, which we talked about quite a lot. But
That's something I didn't look into on the US front. It's like, you know, we could find out, I guess, but I don't have an answer there. We'd have to dig deeper into the data or ask that question specifically. Liga, I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
Yeah, so we saw that the new players come from the segments that are the most affluent as well. So they are the segments with most disposable income. So the question is not tricky at all. So these people actually had means to spend that additional income. So there is no negative correlation there whatsoever.
Right, next question. With the proliferation of new players during COVID, some from the sports betting and casino arenas, when do you think $100 scratch ticket will become viable for the US market?
Wow. Boy, I need a crystal ball for that one, because, you know, states are still adopting the 50s, but let me tell you, the 50s are a huge hit. The big question is how much do they cannibalize the other price points? We want to make sure when we offer 50s that it doesn't affect the other price points. So, you know, there are ways to do that by putting them into a family of games, and, you know, there's a strategy involved with that to do it the right way. $100 price point, wow. I can only imagine the level of analytics that are going to have to go behind that one, but you know, anything goes. I come from the casino side, and true players who, I mean, this is their form of entertainment. This is what they like to do the most. And on the casino side, because I come from there, I don't think it's one of those situations that'll never occur. I think it's possible. Will it be in every state? Probably not. But it's a ways off yet. I truly believe that. It could have such an impact on other price points. We really have to figure that out. We don't want to jeopardize the rest of the business for the sake of a price point at that level.
Right. Just you mentioned the casino there, and one of the factors you mentioned was casino, land-based casinos being closed in terms of possible explanations for the rising players. Have you got any insights into how whether these players are going to continue playing when casinos open?
We've asked that a lot in the States. I'll let Liga cover it from the European standpoint, but in the States, we've actually asked that question, and the majority of players say they still plan on playing lottery. At what level? You know, disposable income for entertainment purposes, it's really discretionary income that we're all competing for the same dollar. So how it's being spread apart across, it's certainly going to change as there's more options available. And that's not just within gaming, it's within anything. I mean, the restaurants are reopening. There's going to be people going out more often. There's going to be people going to concerts and shows and things like that. So that discretionary income, that share of the wallet is going to shrink. So we need to be prepared. That's why the being attractive is so important. If we show that this is an attractive entertainment option, we'll be able to retain more of those players going forward. But how much? I think it's going to vary by state. I think it's going to vary based on a lot of things. And that's what we're challenged with. That's why we are so busy. Liga's team and my team, there's so many questions out there that we need to answer, really to wrap our head around what's going to happen. We need to monitor that. Liga?
Yes, similarly here, that people, it's also unfair to ask this question to our players now, the same like we don't really know what will happen in a month's time. We might be going into another lockdown, you know, who knows? But they've got all intentions. They're enjoying their experience at the moment. They're happy to commit. Well, especially enthusiast segment is very happy to commit that they will continue playing, but they're probably not happy to commit to a level of engagement. So how much of that disposable income will go to instant win or lottery in general. And we also need to remember that in Europe, online offering and online gambling is on such a more advanced level compared to the United States that people actually had a lot of opportunities to play bingo online, play poker online for money, play online casinos. So all these virtual sports betting, all these things remained open and available to players. So that's probably why also the increase in scratch card play in Europe wasn't as outstanding as it was in the United States.
Right.
We're coming towards the end of our time, but we have one more question. This is for you, really, Tim, on the US market. Okay. Do you think the high dollar ticket growth is attributed at all to stimulus money from the government? Do you think this growth is sustainable?
You know, we'd never flat out ask that question. We're trying to, as Liga said, stick with our segmentation, understand the types of players that are driving this growth, and that's been our focus. And you know, how they're spending their money, sure, it's part of the discretionary income. That'll be up to the player. If one of the entertainment options isn't filled with anything else because it's all closed, obviously lottery could benefit from that, but we don't know. We haven't asked, and frankly, you know, our focus, like I said, is on which players. We really need to be responsible in terms of how we position things. So that's not one of our focuses, is to get people to spend stimulus money. It's to provide an entertainment experience that is attractive and really that they want to come back to, win or lose.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Tim. Thank you, Liga. That was fantastic. A great session. And if anybody wants to get in touch with Tim and Liga, we'll be posting this webinar on the gamingintelligence.com website, and no doubt somewhere on the Scientific Games website. But you can go and log in and get their details. So thank you, Tim, and thank you, Liga, and thank you everybody for joining us. Goodbye.
I just want to thank everyone at Gaming Intelligence for this opportunity.
Thanks, chaps.
All right. Bye-bye.